Bar Lasso was a young man who lived with his family on a small farm. His family wasn't rich, but they worked hard every day. They grew just enough food to feed themselves, and though they didn't have much, they never went hungry. Bar had an older sister, and together they lived in a home full of love and simple joys. They didn't need many things to feel happy. Their life was peaceful, and Bar felt content with his family and their small, close-knit world. When Bar turned 22, something big happened. The Civil War began. This war split the country in two. It made people take sides, even inside their own families. The northern states wanted to end slavery, while many of the southern states wanted to keep it. The country was divided, and this division also reached Bar's home. Bar's parents and his older sister believed in the Southern cause. They wanted to protect their way of life. Bar, however, believed in freedom and equality. He supported the Northern cause, the Union. The difference in opinions created a lot of tension in Bar's home. It wasn't just an argument here and there, it became a deep, painful divide. Bar loved his family, but he could feel the gap growing. It was hard to eat dinner together without arguing. It was hard to talk about the future without getting upset, but felt torn. His family, the people he loved most, believed in something that he couldn't agree with. He tried to make them understand his point of view, but it didn't work. The more he tried to explain, the more distant they seemed. And Bar began to feel more alone. It wasn't just that his family disagreed with him. They didn't understand why he felt so strongly. To them, the Southern way of life was something to protect. To Bar, it felt like a way of life built on injustice. He couldn't pretend that everything was fine when he believed so deeply that things needed to change. The pain of this difference grew every day. It made Bar question his place in the world. Could he stay in a home where his beliefs were not respected? Could he stay in a house where the walls were not just made of wood, but of disagreements and hurt feelings? One day, after a long and emotional discussion with his family, Bar made a decision. He could not stay there anymore. He could not stay in a house where love was mixed with so much pain and disagreement. He could not live in a place where his own beliefs were not accepted. Bar decided to leave. He knew it was a hard decision, but it was the only one he could make. He loved his family, but he couldn't let his beliefs be swallowed up by their views. He had to follow what he believed in, even if it meant walking away from everything he knew. His family did not try to stop him. They didn't say goodbye, they just watched him leave. Bar walked away from his home without anyone holding him back. His heart was heavy, but he knew he was making the right choice. The road ahead was uncertain, but staying home, staying in a house full of division, felt like it would break him. He had to leave. Bar joined the Union Army. He wanted to fight for what he believed in. He wanted to fight for freedom and equality. He wanted to fight for a future where people were not treated differently because of the color of their skin. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was one that felt right in his heart. Bar became a cavalryman, and soon he was in battle. The fighting was fierce, and the war was hard. But Bar held on to his hope for a better future, one where families wouldn't be divided by war, one where there would be peace. Leaving his family was painful. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. He didn't know what the future would bring, but he couldn't stay in a place where he felt trapped. He couldn't stay in a place that felt like it was tearing him apart. Bar left his home, his family, and everything he had known, to fight for what he believed was right. As he walked away, he knew it was the beginning of a new chapter in his life. The war was just beginning, and Bar had no idea what would come next, but he was ready to face it. Even though Bar left with a heavy heart, he knew he had to fight for freedom. He didn't know how long the war would last, or what kind of man he would become, but he believed that change was possible, and that belief was enough to keep him going, even when things were hard. Bar Lasso may have left his home and his family behind, but he did not leave his dreams or his hope for a better future. He had chosen a side, and now he had to fight for it. Bar Lasso had now been fighting in the Union Army for 2 years. The war had changed him. Before the war, he was just a young farmer who lived a simple life. He spent his days working on the land, helping his family, and dreaming about the future. But now, as a soldier, his life was different. Each day, he faced danger, fear, and the harsh reality of war. He fought in battles, marched for miles, and saw many things that made him feel numb inside. The first few months in the army had been difficult for Bar. The fighting was intense, and the constant marching wore him down. His body ached, and his mind was tired from the stress and fear of being in battle. But despite the hardships, Bar had a strong belief that he was doing the right thing. He was fighting for freedom, for the future of his country, and for the people who couldn't fight for themselves. This belief kept him going, even when everything seemed too hard. Bar had learned many things since he joined the army. He had learned to be brave, to stay calm in the heat of battle, and to trust the soldiers around him. But he had also learned about the terrible cost of war. He saw friends and comrades fall in battle, their lives taken away in an instant. He saw villages burned to the ground, and homes destroyed by the violence of war. Each day, he faced the fear that he might never see tomorrow. The war had changed him, but it also made him stronger. He had to survive, not just for himself, but for the people who needed him to keep fighting. As the months went by, Bar began to feel more and more distant from the life he had left behind. He missed his family, but the pain of being away from them was slowly replaced by the pain of losing so many friends and comrades. The war was cruel, and it was hard to see a way out. Bar often thought about his family, about the farm he had grown up on, and the simple life he had left behind. But he knew he could never go back to that life. The war had changed everything. One day, after a long and exhausting battle, Bar was given the chance to rest. He was given a short break from the fighting, and he took the opportunity to think about his family. He missed them deeply, and he wondered how they were doing. He had not seen them in so long. Would they still be the same? Would they welcome him back if he returned? These questions weighed heavily on his heart. But even more than that, Bar wondered if they would understand why he had left them. Would they understand his decision to fight for the Union? Despite all the pain and struggle, Bar never lost his belief that he was fighting for something good. He knew that the country would one day be better because of the choices he had made. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, when he wasn't fighting, Bar felt a deep loneliness. He missed the days when life was simpler, when he didn't have to worry about battle, fear, and death. He missed the warmth of his family's home and the safety of the land he had grown up on. Still, Bar knew that he could not stop fighting. The war was far from over, and every battle brought him closer to his goal. He had already lost so much, but he had also gained strength, courage, and the belief that his fight was important. His purpose had become clear, and nothing could stop him from continuing on the path he had chosen. As the war went on, Bar's heart remained divided. On one hand, he longed to be home with his family, to see the farm again, to return to the life he once knew. On the other hand, he knew that the war needed to be won, and he could not turn back now. The world had changed, and Bar had changed with it. There was no going back to the past. He had to keep moving forward, no matter how hard it was. In the quiet moments, when he was not on the battlefield, Bar would think about his family, his home, and the life he had left behind. He wondered what had happened to them, how they were coping without him. But he knew that he had made the right choice, even if it meant giving up the life he had once loved. The war was about freedom, about the future, and about making sure that his children would grow up in a country where everyone was free. Bar's struggle was not just a physical one, it was emotional, too. He fought for his beliefs, but he also fought to hold on to his memories, his hopes, and his dreams. Each battle was not just a fight for the Union, it was a fight for himself, for his future, and for the future of everyone who believed in freedom. Bar had come a long way since he first left his home. He had become a soldier, a fighter, and a man who had seen both the good and the bad of the world. But despite everything, he never lost his hope. He never gave up on the belief that one day, peace would come. That belief was what kept him going, even when everything else seemed lost. The next morning, Bar woke up feeling restless. His sleep had been filled with strange dreams, and he couldn't shake off the feeling that something was not right. Did he really visit his family the night before, or was it all just a dream? The memories of the cold silence in his home were still fresh in his mind. The images of his father turning away from him and his mother's empty stare made his heart ache. He couldn't understand what had happened. He felt like he needed to go back and see his family again. To understand if it was real, he decided to go back to his family's farm. The journey was long, and as he walked, he met his old friend, Bushrod Oro. Bushrod had been his childhood friend, and they had grown up together. But since the war began, they hadn't seen each other much. When Bushrod heard that Bar was going back to visit his family, his face grew serious. Bar noticed the change in his friend's expression but didn't think much of it at first. He continued walking beside Bushrod, talking about his hopes of reuniting with his family. "I know my family still doesn't agree with me about the war," Bar said, "but something feels different now. I think they might understand why I joined the Union." Bushrod listened quietly for a while, then he spoke, his voice heavy with concern. "There have been changes," Bushrod said. "Things are not the same." Bar didn't understand what Bushrod meant, but he could tell his friend was worried. "I'll go with you," Bushrod added. Bar didn't ask more questions. He appreciated his friend's company and continued walking toward the farm, hoping to find some answers. When they arrived at the farm, Bar felt a wave of shock wash over him. Where his family's house had once stood, there was nothing but broken walls and burnt remains. The house was completely destroyed. Bar stood frozen, unable to speak. This wasn't what he had expected to find. His family's home, the place where he had grown up, was now just a pile of ash and rubble. The garden, once full of flowers and plants, was now overgrown and wild. It was hard for Bar to believe what he was seeing. His home, his family, everything he had known was gone. "I didn't know how to tell you," Bushrod said softly, his voice full of sympathy. "A year ago, there was a battle here. Your house was hit by Union shells. There was a fire. Everything was destroyed, but felt as if the ground had been pulled from under his feet." His mind raced. "My family?" he asked, his voice shaking. He needed to know. The fear in his heart grew as he waited for Bushrod's answer. Bushrod lowered his head. "They're in heaven now," he said quietly. "They were killed when the house was destroyed." Bar couldn't believe it. He had left home hoping to find peace and perhaps even a way to make things right with his family. But now the war had taken everything from him. His family was gone, and the house that had once been filled with laughter and love was reduced to nothing. Bar's heart was broken. The pain of losing his family was unbearable. He felt a deep emptiness inside, as if something important had been ripped away from him. As he stood there, staring at the ruins of his home, Bar realized the true cost of the war. The war had taken so much from him. It had destroyed his family, his home, and the life he had once known. It wasn't just the soldiers who were affected by the war. The families left behind were hurt too. The homes were destroyed, and the lives of ordinary people were torn apart. The war had caused so much pain, and Bar could see that now. He felt angry and sad at the same time. Why did the war have to take so much? Why couldn't people find a way to live in peace? As he stood in the middle of the ruins, Bar realized that the war had not only taken his family, but had also taken his hope. The world he had known before the war no longer existed. He couldn't go back to the way things were. The war had changed everything. But despite the deep sorrow in his heart, Bar knew he had to keep going. He couldn't let the war take away his future too. Bar walked away from the ruins of his family's home with a heavy heart. The truth of the war was painful, but he had learned an important lesson. The war was not just about battles fought on the front lines. It was about families torn apart, homes lost, and lives changed forever. It was about the things that were taken away when people couldn't find a way to understand each other. Bar's story was a painful reminder of the human cost of war. It was not just the soldiers who suffered, but the families, the communities, and the land itself. The true cost of war was not measured in victories or defeats. It was measured in the lives lost, the dreams shattered, and the love that was torn apart. Bar's heart was broken, but he also knew that peace was the only way forward. The war had taken so much, but perhaps, in time, people could learn to rebuild, to forgive, and to understand each other once more. As Bar left the ruins of his family's home behind, he promised himself that he would never forget the lesson the war had taught him. He would carry it with him always, no matter what the future held. The cost of war was too high, and it was a lesson that could never be forgotten. Bar Lasso's journey was one filled with pain, loss, and the harsh realities of war. He began as a young farmer with a loving family, but the Civil War tore everything apart. His decision to join the Union Army, leaving behind his family and home, was not an easy one. He chose his beliefs over family, hoping to find peace and a better future. But the war proved to be far more destructive than he could have imagined. After 2 years of fighting, Bar returned home, only to discover that his family had been lost in a terrible battle. His home, where he had once felt love and warmth, was now a pile of ruins. Bar's story is one of heartbreak and the true cost of war. It is a reminder that war affects not only the soldiers who fight, but also their families and the communities they leave behind. The destruction is not only physical but emotional. Families are torn apart, and lives are lost, not just on the battlefield, but in homes, hearts, and memories. Bar's pain wasn't just from losing his family, but from the realization that war takes away everything: peace, love, and hope. The lesson Bar's story teaches us is about the importance of peace, understanding, and love. In times of division and conflict, it's easy to forget the consequences of our choices. War may seem like a solution to many problems, but it only brings more suffering. Bar's story shows us how deeply war can affect every part of our lives. But even in the face of such pain, there is always hope for a better future. We can learn from the past and choose understanding, communication, and peace over violence and division. In our current lives, we may not be fighting wars, but we face challenges that can divide us, whether it's differences in opinion, misunderstandings, or conflicts in our personal relationships. The lesson is clear: choosing peace, understanding, and empathy can help us avoid the harm that comes from fighting, whether literally or figuratively. By focusing on unity, we can create stronger, healthier relationships and communities. Congratulations on improving your English listening skills by listening to the whole story. You've learned so much through Bar Lasso's journey. Keep up the great work, and remember, learning is a continuous process. Every story you hear helps you get better at understanding and speaking English. Now, I have a small question for you to test your understanding. Question: what did Bar Lasso lose in the war? A, his family and home, B, his job. Please comment your answer or B below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot to us and gives us the motivation to continue creating great content for you. If you enjoy the story and want to help us keep making videos, please consider donating. The beginning is always tough, and your donations help us create quality content for all of you. We do this for free to help you learn English, and every bit of support counts. Thank you so much for your support.